Welcome back to Web API Tutorials. I am Venkat. From this video onwards, let us start user CRUD operations. As part of this, let's create the user creation endpoint in this video. This is our user service. We have created a method to create password hashing with salt. And let us create the user creation method, public boolean create user. So in this method, we are going to implement the user creation logic. So before creating this one, I need to show you two things. First one is the DTO. I have created user DTO. So you also need to create user DTO with these fields. Okay. So user ID, username, password is active, user type ID. Okay. And along with that, we need to create the AutoMapper mapping. So here user DTO and this one is a user. So with this I have created the AutoMapper configuration for user and user DTO. So now all are ready. So AutoMapper created and DTO created. Now let us go to user service and implement the logic. So what is the data we need to accept here? User DTO. User DTO. User DTO. And let us make this method as asynchronous, and this should be task of boolean. So here we need to put async keyword. So now this method is asynchronous method. So we need to validate the DTO. If DTO equal to null, throw argument null exception. We need to throw new argument null exception. But this one is a older way. So there is a new way introduced in .NET 6. The new way here is very simple. Argument null exception dot throw if null. If DTO is null, then throw this. So this is new way of implementing it. So you can see new way is very simple. So in single line we can check the nulls, and if there is a null we can throw the exception with that name. So if you want to modify or customize the name exception, you can customize it like the argument is null. Like that you can also customize. Okay. So this one is a older way. I'm commenting it. So that's a new way. Okay, validation is done. Once the validation is done, we need to validate the username, if the user is already there with that username or not. Okay. So for that, where existing user equal to, so where existing user equal to underscore user repository dot get async user tends to user dot username dot equals DTO dot username. Okay, now we are checking if there is any user existed in the database with this username or not. Okay, so here we are checking. Now come here. If existing user not equal to null, that means if there is a user with that username, we need to throw an error. Okay, throw new exception. The the username already taken or used, anything you can return. The username is already taken. Okay, that's the exception we are returning. Once that one is completed, we need to start creating the user. Okay, so for this, user equal to mapper dot map. Here we need to provide DTO. So we need to copy the values from DTO, right? So create the user object and copy the values from DTO. Okay, the user object will be created. So once the values are copied, what we need to assign additional values? User dot is deleted equal to false. User dot created date equal to date time dot now. User dot modified date equal to date time dot now. So I have assigned the additional values. So why I am assigning these values means, so these values are not coming from the end user. So whatever the values coming from the end user are copied into this one. So these values are not coming from end user. That's why I am filling these. So after filling these values, we need to create the hash of the password. We need to create the hash of the password. For that, we need to use this one. Okay, where password hash equal to, we need to call this method. We need to pass DTO dot password. So once that one is passed, we will get the hashed password. Before doing this, we need to check if the password is null or not. Okay, if password we need to check that. So if it is not null, then we will create the hash. Okay, once the hash creation is done, we need to assign that to user. User dot password equal to DTO, no, not DTO, password hash dot password hash, and salt, password salt equal to salt. Okay, so we have created a hash and assigned it to user dot password, and we have created a salt, assigned it to the user dot password salt. So the password hashing part also completed. Once that is done, we need to create the user. Underscore repository dot create async of user. So all these are async methods. We need to put await before that. Await. And are there any other synchronous methods? Here also we need to put await. And yeah, we will get the user, and we are creating this thing and password and create async and all done. So once everything is correct, we need to return true. If something goes wrong, then it will return the exception like this, or runtime exception. Okay, so the service method creation is completed. So now we need to consume this service from the controller. To consume this service from the controller, we need to put this inside the interface. Go to interface and add this method. That's the definition. So we have added the method definition inside the interface so that we can consume this from outside world. Let's go to the controller. Where is the controller? User controller. Okay, there is no user controller. Let's create it. Controller, API controller, and name it as a user controller. Okay, this is the user controller, and here what we need to do, so let's create the constructor first. CTOR tab, you will get the constructor inserted, and here what we need, the API response we needed. Let's copy that from, yes. So here we need to see what are required and what are all not required. Okay, so here you can see AutoMapper is gone inside the service. Let's see. So here the repository is not required. Okay, so the user repository is not required because we have used that inside the service, so we don't need to use it here. We need API response and logger if needed. Okay, so this logger is what? User controller. Let's change that. So let's change this controller name to this one. Now repository is not required. So what we are using here? Mapper if required and API response. So if we don't use the mapper, we are going to remove this one. Okay. This one also not required. That's it. Now our controller is ready. So here we need to create the endpoint public asynchronous method task of what is the response we are returning? API response. Create user async. What is the input we are going to get? User DTO. And that's our method. And inside this, we need to put the try block and tab so that snippet will get inserted. And inside the try block, where user created equal to underscore, here we need to inject the service. Okay, so what is our service name? Private read only iUser service. That's our service. We have injected the user service. Okay, and here we can use that user service. Underscore user service dot create user async, pass the DTO. That's it, right? It's a asynchronous method. We need to put await. Okay, so user created, and here once the user is created, so we need to prepare the response and need to pass that. Okay, let's go and get the response creation. So this is the response creation, and we need to get the catch block also. Okay, we have already written all this code inside the student controller. You are well known of this code. That's why I'm copying it. Okay, so the API response, we can directly assign the user created here in this case, because all this is hidden inside the service. Okay, so now it is a user created and status is true. HTTP status code is okay, and we are returning API response. Okay, of API response. What is this error? Okay, this one should be action result of API response. That's why it is showing error. Now it is correct. And if there is some exception, we are creating the errors, we are adding the errors, and status code we are setting as an internal server error, and status equal to false, and returning that response. Okay. So user creational endpoint, this is the user creational endpoint. Let us test this. Before going to test it, we need to register this service for dependency injection. Let's go to the program.cs. So I have already registered this. You can see I user service, user service. You need to register this builder.services.add scoped I user service, user service. Okay. So don't forget to register your service for dependency injection. Okay. All good. Let us start running this. So here we got one error in Swagger. That's because we did not put HTTP get or post here. So this is a HTTP post method. Let's get the route name here. So all this, yes, all the response types. It's a user. Okay, so once this one is added, then rerun it. And here you can see this is the users table. There are no records. And the Swagger is running correctly. And let's minimize the role privilege, student. And here is the user creation endpoint. Let's try it out. And ID is not required because we are creating user. Username is Venkat and the password is Venkat. Is active true, user type. So user type ID. What is the user type ID? So what are the user types we have? We have these many user types: students, faculty, supporting staff, parents. So now our user type is a student. It's a 1. Okay, execute it. And here you can see status equal to true, status code true 100, data equal to true. So that means the user creation is completed. It is able to create the user. Let's execute this one. And here you can see the username is Venkat, and you can see the hashed password. This one is the hashed password, and here is the password salt, and user type is 1, that means student, and is active equal to 1 means true, the user is active, is deleted false, and created date modified date. So you can see the user creation is working. Let us try to create one more user. username Nehant, and password is ABC. Execute. This time this one also created successfully. Let's go to the database and execute it. You can see there is a new user created, Nehant. This one is the password, hashed password, and this one is the salt, password salt. Okay, user type, ID, is active, and other details. Okay, now we are able to create the user with password hashing. So that's about user creation endpoint with password hashing mechanism. And in the next video, let us create the retrieval endpoints. For more videos like this, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.